You might think getting a degree guarantees you a great future. But what if I told you it could actually be holding you back? In today's episode, I'm going to be talking about a slightly controversial topic on students' and parents' minds, which is whether going to uni is still the best option for your future career. And just for the record, I was an Oxford engineering graduate and also Eton College maths teacher. So some of what I'm going to be talking about I've had personal experience with, and also as a teacher, I've discussed this topic with many of my students over the years. Okay, so let's break down the two main scenarios we have here. So scenario one is going to be that you do this degree. It might be 3 or 4 years and therefore might cost you in the UK to £30,000 to £40,000, if not more. And by the end of that, you will have your degree. And then option two will be to go straight into the workforce or to get an apprenticeship at age 18. Okay, so we're going to assume here that you have been at school till age 18. And perhaps also on the side, you will have done some courses on websites like Coursera, which I'll touch upon later. So essentially, you will have saved yourself £30,000 to £40,000 and will have gained 3 to 4 years of useful, specific work experience and gain the soft skills aligning with that job. So, before we get into properly which might be the better option of one and two, there's two important things to mention first. The first one is that if your end goal is to become, let's say, an engineer, a lawyer, a doctor, let's say a teacher in the state sector, for jobs like those, it is compulsory that you have got a degree because it's part of the law, basically. So that means that if that's your end goal, okay, there's no debate here, you must go to uni. So the real main question is, assuming you aren't doing those subjects, will that first job you get after a 3-4 year degree be better than where you'd be if you're in your 4th or 5th year of the workforce? And just bear in mind that if your answer is that you'll be at the exact same salary, let's say, then of course you're not better off with your degree because you're now £40,000 in debt. So here's an example I'm going to make up to show you this. So imagine in your first year of age 18 getting a job, you get 20k salary. And let's say you then get up to 22.5 and then 25 after 3 years, okay? So at that point, you would have accumulated £67,500. Of course, that's just gross, of course, you've been taxing that, but just keep in mind that for now. And let's say now that with those 3 years experience, so now it's your 4th year, you apply for that 30k job and you got it. Well, that might be the same job that you would have got if you were in your first year of your degree. So we're comparing there, of course, you've not only got that 3 year salary up front, but on top of that, you haven't paid 40 grand debt. So in that scenario, of course, it's much better not to go to uni. But you can take this one step further. What if instead you manage to get, let's say, a 30k job after 3 years, but the guy from uni, yourself, got 35k, so it's 5k more. And let's say at that point, for the rest of your life, you keep having that 5k difference. Well, eventually, as you see there, bit by bit, if it was 5k difference, eventually, the person with the degree is always simply ahead and therefore will catch up and be the better solution. But in reality, this scenario here about catching up in 10, 20 years time isn't the case because what will really determine your salary will be other factors such as how good you are, how persistent you are, and other things. It won't be simply a 5k forever difference. But look, it's all well spouting out numbers here. What you really have to do is look at the market, see actually what jobs are available and what their requirements are. Because you may be thinking, well, look, that job I want to get has a requirement, not by law, but a requirement by the company that you have a degree. And that might be the case. And that's where the research is very important when making your mind up here. But just you aware, there are a lot more companies nowadays that actually, instead of asking for degrees, they're actually okay with, let's say, you having a certificate from a Coursera, or more importantly, having relevant work experience. You will often see it says there, requirements, a degree, or relevant years of experience. I've seen that many times. So therefore, what I recommend you do is to do the research. So it might be that you find that if you're going for a finance role, let's say, you might find that you look up all those jobs which you want to have, and 99% require degrees, no questions asked. So at that point, you might think, well, for just 1% of roles I can apply for, that's probably too risky. So at that point, we'll get a degree. But instead, you might find that actually you're doing the research and 50% require degrees and therefore 50 don't require a degree and just want experience. So at that point, again, risk versus reward, you may think to yourself, well, if on average there's, let's say, 1,000 jobs on the marketplace at one time, well, if half I can apply for, that's still 500. That's still not bad. So it's worth you doing that research and to work out whether it's too risky or not. But just remember, many of these companies are looking more for your soft skills and your skill sets as opposed to just a certificate. And especially if the job isn't that technical. But I'll touch on that later. And a point I like to make is the following, that A-levels were simply a means to an end. And most people want to do well on the A-levels to get to university. But it should be the same for uni. You want to have that degree to what? To get the job. But if none of there are jobs out there that don't require a degree to get the job, then there's no need for that bit for uni. Just cut it out and go straight into the workforce and make money. But again, as I mentioned, just look at the market for what you want. And just bear in mind that what might work against you here is that many of the big corporates and the governments will most likely they want to keep promoting the uni system because they make a lot of money out of it. So in this scenario, it might be that sadly in your particular domain, they'll require a degree. But what might bypass this is if there are many small companies, again, in the roles you want to apply for. Because many small companies don't play these big games. They simply want the best person. That could be your work experience, not you doing a degree. And on top of that, often actually small companies actually pay more money if that's what motivates you. Okay, so for the remainder of this video, I'm going to be talking about whether A, the actual subject you're taking for your degree will make an impact on your decision, and also B, whether the actual uni you've got into, see how good it is, also will make an impact on your decision. So for that first question about what you're actually studying, this is mostly applicable, I would say, for those individuals who are taking, let's say, more generic subjects, say not STEM, so for example, let's say history, geography, etc., who then want to go into, let's say, an unrelated field for their job, like, let's say, finance, consultancy. And I've seen many people like this in my lifetime. So for those individuals, the first thing you want to look at is, well, the jobs you want, just look, can you actually get them? Because many times these roles say that we need a degree in one of these certain subjects, maths, physics, etc. So it might be that you couldn't anyway get those roles. But let's say that you are eligible and you can do it, but these roles also say all relevant work experience. Well, the question is, would your skill set after being at university for 3 or 4 years be better than that other individual who didn't go to uni and instead had 3 or 4 years already work experience in that exact sector? What makes you think that you yourself could beat them in an interview, essentially? And this begs the question of what skill set do you actually get whilst at uni? And of course, I can't speak for other countries, I can just speak for the UK. But what I've noticed, both being at uni in the UK and then going into work in the UK, is that at university, well, A, people are less efficient. They often wake up late, often linked to excessive nights out clubbing, and linked to that, of course, with the UK let's say culture linked to excessive drinking and therefore being hungover. And that goes for all UK universities. And the final thing you might notice is that uni students still act as if they're at school with their friends being of the same age. And when you're 18, still on age 22, they're ancient. And one of the best things I found when I left uni was that suddenly you had connections of all ages and you'd learn different things and how to interact properly. So essentially here, what I'm seeing is this is a reduced skill set compared to what you get if you're working. Now, don't get me wrong. People who start work at 18 will still have fun. They'll still go on nights out, but not to the same extent of doing it 4 or 5 times a week and getting up at midday. That won't happen because they have a job and a routine they must adhere to. And just remember this point. Ultimately, companies, they want to make money. They're a money-making machine. So if you're one of these individuals whose degree isn't relevant to the job, and on top of that, you haven't got the right skill sets yet, then why on earth would they employ you? Now, we can take this one step further and say, well, what if instead actually you're doing a degree which you want to continue into your job? So let's say, for example, you were doing a computer science degree and you want to go into software engineer. Well, in that scenario, we can still try and play this game and decide, is it still worth not going to uni? Because let's say if you've again done the research and half the jobs will take you with experience, well then why not go down that route? And it might be harder if you're doing a STEM subject, which means science, technology, engineering or maths, because the chances are that what you learn in those 3 years of a degree will be used afterwards in your job. But ultimately, if your apprenticeship that you've applied for, if there exists ones, which there are for many things, by the way, if you got onto one of those, they will on the job teach you those skill sets and you're getting paid for it. And just remember this, in an apprenticeship, what you're learning about will be most likely very specific to what you actually need in a job. Whereas at uni, a lot of what you actually learn about often isn't actually that relevant. Okay, so let's go back to that second question of mine, which is it relevant which uni you go to regarding your outcomes? And essentially my view on this is that it's only relevant if you go to one of those top universities. So let's say in the UK, if it's not an Oxford, a Cambridge, some of the London unis, the chances are that it won't have that significant pulling power. And then even with those top unis, it will depend on whether what you're studying is relevant to the job you're applying for, or at least a skill set. Because for example, you could be applying for finance, but if you have a maths or physics, that's still good. Okay, so let's revisit that example again with the historian who wants to switch into a finance job. Well, if they were studying at, let's say, an Oxford or Cambridge, what that shows is that they are ambitious, they work hard, and they have the right mindset to work towards something and get into that university. Brilliant. Still remember though, that they won't have the soft skills they would have got from working in a job, but at least they're still a smart individual. But here's the thing, that characteristic of working hard, that wasn't created by them being at uni. That was created before in their schools. That was proved back when they're 18 when they were offered the place at that uni. So just think about this. I often hear the following. People say, what did you get at GCSE? What did you get at A-levels? We always hear, what uni did you go to? You never hear about the grades. It's simply like the uni was the grade. If you got into a top university, that was the A star. If you didn't, that was your lower grade. No one really cares about the actual grade you got at the end of it. So what's the point I'm trying to make here? And it's this. For this scenario again, with the historian who wants to transition and hasn't got the right skill sets just yet. Well, their main skill set is that they're hardworking, intelligent, and want to do well. Well, they don't have to go to uni to prove that. They've already proved that at 18. And actually, in theory, if you think about it, they can still apply for these top universities, get the offer, then in summer and August, prove they got the grades for it. So when you're now applying for a job or say apprenticeship, you can say, look, I'm a Cambridge candidate. I got the offer, I got the grades. I simply just decided that for me, that was the wrong option. I want this path. And they'll go, brilliant, smart lad, we'll take you. So in that scenario there, you might actually get the same benefits from having that I'm an Oxford, Cambridge, Durham, whatever person, and yet you didn't spend therefore 3-4 years and 40k on a student loan. So look, I'll make a few final points here. And the first one is this, that I think a very common big error when having these controversial opinions and thinking it through is you might say, well, I'm at uni, I'm a smart person, and I know other people who say aren't at uni and they're not as smart as me, or whatever. And that is not the point at all. You're not comparing yourself, let's say a smart individual, to someone else who doesn't like studying. No. We're saying compare yourself to who you would be if you yourself had at 18 decided to go into the workplace. Because we're assuming here that if you yourself are smart, then you in the workplace will be smart too. So in that scenario there, if you are someone who excels, then guess what? You'll excel in that job. You'll now get better skill sets, meet people of all ages. You'll get 1, 2, 3 years of hopefully promotions or getting a pay rise. At that point, when you apply for that job, you are now quite well-rounded, as opposed to the other individual of yourself who went to uni, perhaps had those negative traits, and at that point now applies for a job which might be completely irrelevant to their degree. And also bear in mind that many famous entrepreneurs and billionaires dropped out of uni or simply didn't go. Now, I'm not saying here that to be famous or be an entrepreneur and do well, don't go to uni. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that for certain scenarios and certain people, that might be the smart choice. And I'll touch on 2 last points, which is, what if people say to you, well, it's fun going to uni, or it's great for connections. And sure, It is fun, and what's great about going to uni is, it's often your first time being free, independent, and that's fantastic. But guess what? You can also get that from going to the workforce, getting an apprenticeship, earning a salary, and you can say move out from your parents' place if that's what you want to do. You can gain those same experiences in an apprenticeship, except you won't gain those more negative experiences, or at least minimize those. And for that second question about making good connections, well, firstly, that only really applies, I would say, for the top unis. But secondly, do you really want to base your whole, say, career outcome, your whole decisions for your life on the chance that you might meet some people who have high drives or want to do well, and that you might actually collab with them? Well, that might not happen. I would much rather be in charge of my destiny than have it resting on other people's shoulders. So, in summary, if you are someone who is soon going down the path of going to uni, or you're a parent of someone that's in those shoes, try and break it down as such. What's the end goal? For that end goal, what are the job specs? Could I get a job with experience and not a degree? And if so, how many offer that? Are there any apprenticeships or jobs in that field that take on 18-year-olds? And if you're uncertain, give those companies a call. So it might be that actually you find out that it's worth not going to uni and saving yourself 40 grand. Or perhaps not, you might find that actually it is best to go to uni. So the point here is, don't just be blind and follow the status quo. Very important that you do the research and find out for you as an individual what is the best option. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button and bell notification. Feel free to leave any comments and any suggestions for future content. And as ever, onwards and upwards.